Hello friends. Welcome to the Ben 10 What Ifs. How are you all? So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Ben 10 awakened the goddess mode Omnitrix and got Harem of Charmcaster. Julie and Attea. Also be sure to subscribe and like this video. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. Cosmic Awakening. The familiar weight of responsibility settled on Ben Tennyson's shoulders as he peered through the windshield of his custom-built plumber spacecraft. Earth hung suspended in the void like a blue-green marble, peaceful from this distance, deceivingly so. 6 years as Earth's premier defender had taught him that tranquility never lasted. Proximity alert, announced the ship's AI in a voice modeled after his cousin Gwen's. Unidentified GY signature detected at coordinates 33.7 by 118.2. Ben's fingers danced across the holographic interface, bringing up a detailed scan. Southern California coast. Energy readings are, wait, that can't be right. He frowned at the pulsing anomaly. The readout displayed quantum fluctuations typically associated with transdimensional rifts, but with patterns eerily similar to the Omnitrix's own energy signature. Plumber headquarters requesting status update, the AI prompted. Tell them I'm investigating personally. At 23, Ben had learned when to call for backup and when to trust his instincts. This situation demanded the latter. Something about those energy readings felt almost familiar. The ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, clouds parting like gossamer curtai. As he navigated toward the Pacific coast. Sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and violet, the ocean below reflecting fractured light like scattered diamonds. As beautiful as the view was, Ben's attention remained fixed on the steadily increasing energy readings. He landed the craft on a secluded stretch of beach, engaging the cloaking mechanism before stepping out onto cool sand. The sea breeze carried the tang of salt and ozone, the latter growing more pronounced as he approached the water's edge. There, hovering inches above the gently lapping waves, pulsed a sphere of energy no larger than a basketball. Its surface rippled with colors that shouldn't exist in natural light, colors that made his eyes water when he tried to focus directly on them. The Omnitrix on his wrist vibrated subtly, almost like recognition. Scanning, Ben murmured, activating the device's analysis function. The familiar green interface projected upward, but instead of displaying standard readings, holographic symbols flickered and transformed into unfamiliar patterns. What the? Ben tapped the interface, trying to restore normal function. Omnitrix, run diagnostic. Diagnostic protocols unavailable. The device responded in a voice that wasn't quite its own, deeper, with harmonics that seemed to echo from somewhere distant. Primordial recognition sequence initiating. Before Ben could respond, the anomaly pulsed with blinding intensity. The sphere expanded outward in a silent shockwave that passed through him like a ghost, leaving his skin tingling with static electricity. The Omnitrix's green glow intensified to painful brightness, forcing Ben to shield his eyes with his free arm. When the light faded, Ben lowered his arm to find the anomaly gone, but the Omnitrix had changed. The familiar green and black design had been replaced by something altogether different. The faceplate now displayed swirling patterns in shades of silver, violet, and a color Ben couldn't name, omething between blue and white that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Delicate lines like circuit pathways extended from the device up his forearm, fading just below his elbow. Omnitrix. Ben queried cautiously. Status report. Reconfiguration in progress. The device responded, its voice now distinctly feminine with an otherworldly quality that sent shivers down Ben's spine. Goddess Protocol awakening. Goddess Protocol. That's not an Omnitrix function I've ever heard of. Ben's brow furrowed as he attempted to access the master control, only to find the interface unresponsive to his commands. Azimuth never mentioned anything like this. The patterns on the device's surface shifted like liquid metal, and Ben felt a strange sensation, as if time itself had momentarily stuttered around him. The waves on the beach froze mid-crash, then reversed direction before continuing their natural rhythm. A seagull overhead slowed to impossible stillness before resuming its flight. Alarm bells rang in Ben's mind. In his years of wielding the Omnitrix, he'd experienced countless bizarre phenomena, but nothing quite like this. This wasn't a standard transformation or an Omnitrix malfunction. This was something fundamentally different. A sudden pressure built behind his eyes, and flashes of unfamiliar images cascaded through his consciousness: a planet with 3 moons, crystalline structures that towered beyond clouds, beings of pure energy communing in a language of light and mathematics. The visions faded as quickly as they had appeared, leaving Ben disoriented and breathing heavily. "I need answers," he muttered, activating his plumber badge. "Connect me to Azimuth." The badge's communication function engaged, but instead of the expected connection to Galvan Prime, the display showed only static. "Communication unavailable," the badge informed him. "Temporal interference detected." Ben glanced at the transformed Omnitrix with growing concern. "What exactly did you do?" he asked the device, not really expecting an answer. To his surprise, the Omnitrix responded. "The goddess awakens from her long slumber. Balance must be restored." A rumble, beneath his feet interrupted any further questioning. The ground trembled, sand shifting as something massive approached from beneath the beach. Ben stepped back, posture instantly shifting to a bat-tle stance honed by years of combat experience. Whatever was coming, he'd face it head-on, as always. The sand erupted 30 feet away, revealing a massive, segmented creature that resembled a hybrid between a centipede and a deep-sea isopod. Its chitinous armor gleamed with an unnatural metallic sheen, and multiple compound eyes focused on Ben with predatory intensity. "Great," Ben muttered, reaching for the Omnitrix by reflex. "Just what I needed, an overgrown roly-poly with an attitude problem." His fingers touched the transformed interface, but instead of the familiar selection mechanism, the device pulsed with energy that enveloped his entire body. Time slowed around him as knowledge flooded his consciousness. This creature was a Chronosapian hunter, an engineered predator designed to track temporal anomalies. And according to the information streaming through his mind, he had just become the most significant temporal anomaly on Earth. The transformation happened differently than any he'd experienced before. Rather than the instant genetic reconfiguration he was accustomed to, Ben felt his consciousness expanding beyond his physical form while his body remained unchanged. He could perceive the flow of time around him, see the subtle eddies and currents of temporal energy that connected all things. The hunter charged, mandibles clicking in anticipation. Ben raised his hand instinctively, and time condensed around the creature. Its movements slowed to a crawl, allowing Ben to calmly step aside as it lumbered past at a fraction of its intended speed. "Okay, that's new," Ben observed, looking at his hands which now emanated a subtle aura visible only to his enhanced perception. He wasn't in an alien form, yet somehow he was manipulating time itself. The hunter broke free of the temporal effect with a screech that vibrated at multiple frequencies simultaneously. It whipped around with surprising agility for its size, its segmented body coiling like a spring before launching toward Ben again. This time, Ben concentrated on the space between himself and the creature. The air shimmered as a temporal barrier materialized, not solid matter, but a localized distor. Cheon of time that caused the hunter to age rapidly as it passed through. By the time it reached the other side, its once gleaming carapace had dulled and begun to crack with age. The creature retreated, confusion evident in its movements as it assessed this unexpected development. It chittered in a complex pattern that Ben somehow understood was a communication signal. "It's calling for reinforcements," Ben realized aloud. "That's probably not good." As if in response to his observation, the Omnitrix, or whatever it had become, pulsed with energy. Knowledge surfaced in Ben's mind. The hunter wasn't a natural evolution but a weapon, created by entities who existed outside conventional time. Its presence here meant someone had noticed the awakening of the goddess protocol, and considered IT threat enough to deploy specialized hunters. Temporal defense systems available, the device informed him, its feminine voice resonating not through his ears but directly in his consciousness. Ben nodded, somehow understanding what needed to be done. He focused on the Omnitrix, drawing upon its energy in a way that felt instinctive despite being entirely new. The circuit-like patterns on his arm brightened, extending further up to his shoulder as power coursed through him. "Let's see what you can really do," he murmured, channeling the energy outward. A dome of iridescent light expanded from his position, encompassing the beach for hundreds of yards in every direction. Within this dome, Ben could sense every temporal anomaly, including 3 more hunters burrowing rapidly toward his position from beneath the sand. With a gesture, He collapsed the time-space between their positions and his, effectively teleporting the submerged hunters to the surface where they materialized in disoriented confusion. Before they could recover, Ben compressed the flow of time around them into a closed loop, a temporal prison that would keep them experiencing the same 5 seconds repeatedly until he released them. The original hunter, witnessing its companion's fate, turned to retreat. Ben tracked its movement and, with precise control he didn't know he possessed, opened a small portal directly in its path. The creature disappeared through the opening, which sealed immediately after. "Where did I send it?" Ben asked the Omnitrix. "Temporal relocation complete. Target displaced to origin point." "And where exactly is that?" Quote, "Information classified under Celestial Sapien Accord, Section 7. Ben sighed. Of course it is. 6 years of experience had taught him that some questions led only to more questions. Especially when higher dimensional beings were involved. The immediate threat neutralized, Ben focused on his transformed state. The temporal manipulation abilities were impressive but concerning. Such power typically came with significant risks, as he'd learned repeatedly throughout his hero career. Closing his eyes, Ben concentrated on relinquishing the enhanced state. The energy gradually receded, the circuit patterns fading from his arm until only the transformed Omnitrix remained as evidence of what had occurred. The device still refused standard commands, its interface responding only to direct thought rather than physical interaction. The beach had returned to normal, peaceful waves lapping at the shore, no sign of the temporal battle that had just occurred. Red save for 4 peculiar depressions in the sand where the time loops had compressed the ground. Ben activated his plumber badge again, relieved to find communications restored. Plumber Base Alpha. This is Ben Tennyson requesting priority connection to Galvan Prime. After a moment, Rook's familiar voice responded. Ben, we've been attempting to contact you for 17 minutes. Sensors DEET. CTED a level 12 temporal anomaly at your location. That's what I need to talk to Azimuth about, Ben replied, glancing at the transformed Omnitrix. Something's happened to the Omnitrix, something called a goddess protocol. A long pause followed before Rook responded, his tone noticeably more cautious. Did you say goddess protocol? Yeah, mean anything to you? Not personally, but I am accessing the restricted archives now. Another pause. Ben, return to headquarters immediately. This is classified beyond standard plumber authorization. I will attempt to contact Azimuth directly. The urgency in Rook's voice was unusual, even after years of partnership. Whatever this goddess protocol was, it clearly registered as significant even in the plumber's extensive database of cosmic threats and phenomena. On my way, Ben confirmed, heading back to his ship. As the craft lifted off, Ben glanced back at the beach where the anomaly had appeared. The transformed Omnitrix pulsed once, and for a brief moment, Ben perceived something impossible, a glimpse of the beach as it had existed 1,000 years ago, then as it would appear 1,000 years in the future, both images overlaid upon the present reality. The vision faded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Ben with an uneasy feeling that the transformation of the Omnitrix was just the beginning of something far more significant than he could possibly imagine. Plumber headquarters hummed with heightened activity as Ben made his way through the central command area. Personnel moved with the practiced efficiency of a well-oiled machine, but he noticed the subtle glances directed at his transformed Omnitrix. News traveled fast, especially when it concerned Earth's primary defender. Magister Tennyson, his ND Father Max, waited in the secure briefing room along with Rook and a holographic projection of a very agitated Azimuth. Show me, the Galvan inventor demanded without preamble as Ben entered. Ben extended his arm, displaying the transformed device. The swirling patterns on its surface seemed to intensify under Azimuth's scrutiny, the unnamed color shifting more rapidly between blue and white. Azimuth's expression transitioned from scientific curiosity to something Ben had rarely seen on the inventor's face, genuine alarm. Impossible, the Galvan muttered. That particular subroutine was RS only encrypted and locked under Celestial Sapien quantum seal. What exactly is the goddess protocol? Max asked, his weathered features set in the serious expression that had become more calm since his promotion to Supreme Magister of Earth's sector. Azimuth's hologram paced, a rare display of agitation from the usually composed Galvan. It was never meant to be activated, merely theoretical research into the fundamental nature of reality manipulation. Well, it's definitely activated now, Ben interjected. And it comes with some pretty intense abilities. I was manipulating time without even transforming. Azimuth stopped pacing, his gaze sharpening. Describe exactly what happened, omitting no detail, no matter how insignificant it might seem. Ben recounted the encounter with the anomaly and the subsequent battle with the temporal hunters, describing the sensations and knowledge that had flooded his consciousness during the event. As he spoke, Azimuth's expression grew increasingly grave. When Ben finished, the room fell into weighted silence. Rook was the first to break it. The creatures you described match no known species in our database, he noted, yet they specifically targeted you after the transformation occurred. They're not in your database because they shouldn't exist in this timeline, Azimuth stated flatly. The Chronosapian hunters are temporal constructs created by the Chronosapians during the Time War, a conflict I had hoped this universe would never experience. Time War? Max questioned. A multidimensional conflict fought across parallel timelines and alternate realities. Azimuth explained. The primary belligerents were the Chronosapians and the Contemmelia, though numerous other species and entities became involved as the conflict expanded. It was ultimately resolved, or rather, prevented from occurring, through the intervention of a being the ancient texts referred to as the Goddess of Equilibrium. Ben felt a chill run down his spine as the Omnitrix pulsed in apparent recognition of the name. And now the Omnitrix is accessing this goddess protocol, he concluded. Why? What triggered it? Azimuth's hologram flickered as he accessed remote systems. The anomaly you encountered was likely a temporal echo, a fragment of an event that has not yet occurred but whose consequences have rippled backward through time. CH phenomena are extremely rare and typically herald significant cosmic disturbances. So basically, something big is coming, and the Omnitrix is preparing for it. Ben summarized. An oversimplification, but essentially correct. Azimuth confirmed reluctantly. The Goddess Protocol was designed as a theoretical failsafe, a means of preserving universal equilibrium in the event of catastrophic timeline degradation. That it has self-activated suggests a level of temporal instability I had thought impossible with current safeguards in place. Rook stepped forward, examining the transformed Omnitrix more closely. These patterns resemble Contemelia's script, but with elements of Chronosapian temporal mathematics integrated into the design. Azimuth nodded. An astute observation. The protocol draws upon both technologies. Among others, it represents one of my most complex theoretical works, one I never intended to implement. Can it be deactivated? Max asked the practical question. Azimuth's silence provided answer enough. Great, Ben sighed. So I'm stuck with a super-powered Omnitrix that's preparing for some kind of temporal doomsday. Just another Tuesday. Despite his flippant remark, the gravity of the situation wasn't lost on him. 6 years of being Earth's primary defender had taught Ben when a threat exceeded the usual parameters. This clearly qualified. I'm coming to Earth, Azimuth announced. This requires direct intervention. In the meantime, Benjamin, you must exercise extreme caution. The abilities granted by the Goddess Protocol are not to be used casually. Each activation creates ripples in the temporal continuum that may attract further attention from entities best left undisturbed. Entities like whatever sent those hunter things. Among others, Azimuth confirmed grimly. The Time War involved beings and factions that exist beyond conventional reality. Some have waited eons for the goddess to manifest again. The briefing concluded with UTH promising to arrive within 24 hours and strict instructions for Ben to avoid using the Omnitrix's new functions unless absolutely necessary. As the others filed out to prepare for the Galvan's arrival, Ben remained behind, studying the transformed device on his wrist. What are you really? He murmured to the Omnitrix. And what's coming that has you so worried? The device pulsed once but offered no verbal response. Instead, Ben felt a subtle shift in his perception. A momentary expansion of awareness that allowed him to sense the complex web of temporal energy flowing throughout the plumber base. Every person, every object existed not just in the present moment but as a continuum stretching backward through their past and forward into possible futures. The sensation faded quickly, but the impression remained. Whatever the Goddess Protocol was preparing for, it involved the very fabric of time itself. Sleep eluded Ben that night. In his apartment overlooking Bellwood's skyline, he paced restlessly. The transformed Omnitrix casting ethereal patterns across the walls with its pulsing light. The device had grown warmer throughout the evening, not uncomfortably so, but noticeable, like a living thing gradually awakening. Occasional flashes of the strange visions continued to surface in his mind. Crystalline cities, beings of pure energy, mathematical equations. That seemed to sing when he focused on them. None of it made sense, yet all of it felt hauntingly familiar, as if he were remembering rather than discovering. At precisely 3:33 a.m., the Omnitrix pulsed with greater intensity. And Ben felt an irresistible urge to step onto his balcony. The night air was cool against his skin as he gazed upward at the star-filled sky. Bellwood had implemented light pollution reduction measures years ago, making the city one of the few metropolitan areas where the Milky Way remained visible on clear nights. Tonight, however, something was different. Among the familiar constellations, a new pattern had emerged, stars that seemed to pulse in synchronization with the Omnitrix. As Ben watched, the pattern shifted, stars appearing where none had been moments before, forming a configuration that resembled the circuit-like patterns that had appeared on his arm during the transformation. "What are you showing me?" Ben asked softly. The Omnitrix's interface activated unbidden, projecting a three-dimensional star map into the air before him. Within the projection, a particular sector was highlighted, a region of space near the Andromeda galaxy that contained what appeared to be a massive temporal anomaly. "Convergence point identified," the device stated in its new, feminine voice. "Temporal nexus forming. Estimated manifestation. 17 solar cycles. 17 days until whatever's coming arrives," Ben translated. "And that's where it'll happen." "Correct. The equilibrium approaches. Preparations must be completed." "What preparations? What is the equilibrium?" Instead of answering directly, the Omnitrix projected a new image, a DNA sequence unlike any Ben had seen before. Unlike the double helix structure of standard DNA, this pattern S spiraled in multiple dimensions simultaneously, portions of it seeming to exist in superposition. Host compatibility. 73%, the device analyzed. Adaptation protocols initiated. A sharp tingling sensation spread from the Omnitrix throughout Ben's body, not painful but intense, like every cell was being individually examined and recalibrated. The sensation lasted only seconds before subsiding. Host compatibility. 78%, the Omnitrix updated. Continued adaptation required. "Whoa, hold on," Ben protested. "You're changing my DNA." Without even asking. "Adjustment necessary for survival," the device responded matter-of-factly. "The goddess cannot manifest through an incompatible vessel." The implications of that statement sent a chill through Ben. "I am not interested in being anyone's vessel, especially not some cosmic goddess I know nothing about." For the first time, the Omnitrix seemed to consider his objection. After a moment, it responded. "Information access granted. Query permitted." Taking the opening, Ben asked, "Who or what is the goddess of equilibrium?" The night sky around him darkened as the projected star map expanded, encompassing his entire field of vision until Ben felt as if he were floating in space. Stars and galaxies wheeled around him in accelerated motion, depicting the passage of vast cosmic time. Before the universe is currently understood, there existed a state of perfect balance, the Omnitrix narrated as the visualization continued. Matter and energy, time and space, existence and void, all aspects in precise equilibrium. The separation of these forces created the current reality paradigm, but introduced fundamental instability. The visualization showed the birth of the universe, the initial expansion, and the formation of the first stars and galaxies. Throughout the cosmic evolution, subtle distortions appeared, areas where the fabric of reality seemed stretched or compressed. Periodically, these instabilities compound to threaten universal coherence, the narration continued. The goddess of equilibrium manifests during these convergence events to restore balance through recalibration of fundamental forces. The visualization shifted to show a humanoid figure composed of energy and light, moving through different planes of reality and adjusting the cosmic architecture with precise manipulations that rippled outward, stabilizing the distortions. The goddess is not a deity in the conventional sense, but a function of reality maintenance, the Omnitrix explained. She requires a physical vessel compatible with her essence, one capable of perceiving and manipulating the underlying structure of existence without being consumed by the process. The visualization returned to normal, leaving Ben standing on his balcony once more, mind reeling from the implications. "And you think I'm supposed to be this vessel?" he asked incredulously. The Omnitrix was designed with multiple evolutionary stages. The device responded. The final stage, the Goddess Protocol, activates only when a convergence event is detected and the wielder has achieved sufficient compatibility. Did Azimuth know about this when he gave me the Omnitrix? Creator Azimuth designed the protocol after witnessing a partial convergence event. The Goddess Protocol was implemented as contingency, not intention. Ben leaned against the balcony railing, processing this information. Throughout his hero career, he'd faced world-ending threats and cosmic dangers, but this felt different, more fundamental. As if the universe itself were requesting his assistance rather than just its inhabitants. "What happens if I refuse?" he finally asked. "If I find a way to deactivate the protocol?" The Omnitrix was silent for a moment before responding. "Convergence proceeds without stabilization. Probability of universal coherence failure, 97.8%. And that means reality collapse, retroactive non-existence of all current timelines. So, no pressure," Ben muttered, gazing up at the stars that had returned to their normal patterns. "Just the end of everything if I don't go along with becoming some cosmic goddess's puppet." "Not puppet," the Omnitrix corrected. "Partnership. The goddess requires consciousness to direct purpose. Without direction, recalibration occurs randomly, often with unforeseen consequences. That, at least, provided some comfort. Whatever this process entailed, it seemed he wouldn't simply be possessed or overridden. "Why me?" Ben asked. The question that had followed him throughout his hero career, from the moment a 10-year-old boy found an alien watch in the woods. Compatibility factors include exposure to multiple DNA patterns without degradation, experience with reality manipulation through Alien X, temporal anomaly resistance developed through multiple timeline interactions, psychological profile indicating strong moral framework with adaptability. "So basically, my weird life has made me weird enough to handle this," Ben summarized with a hint of his old humor. "Affirmative," the Omnitrix confirmed, missing or ignoring the sarcasm. Dawn was breaking over Bellwood, the first hints of sunlight painting the eastern sky in delicate hues of rose and gold. Ben had been talking with the Omnitrix all night, yet felt strangely refreshed rather than exhausted. "One more question," he said as sunlight began to spill across the city. "You mentioned adaptation protocols earlier. What exactly are you adapting me for?" "The goddess requires balance within her vessel," the Omnitrix explained. "Current analysis indicates imbalance in fundamental aspects. Correction requires introduction of complementary energies." "Complementary energies? Like what?" "Magical resonance, technological synchronization, biological complementarity. 3 aspects require harmonization through external catalysts." Before Ben could press for clarification, his plumber badge activated with an urgent alert. Rook's voice came through clearly. "Ben, we're detecting multiple temporal distortions throughout Bellwood. Azimuth's arrival has been expedited. But we require your assistance immediately." "On my way," Ben confirmed, already moving back inside to grab his jacket. As he prepared to leave, the Omnitrix offered one final piece of information. "First catalyst approaching. Magical resonance detected within 50-kilometer radius." Ben paused at the door. Magical resonance. Who? The question died on his lips as understanding dawned. There weren't many magic users powerful enough to register on the Omnitrix's sensors, and fewer still with any connection to him personally. "Charmcaster," he murmured. The Omnitrix pulsed once in confirmation. Bellwood Central Park had become the epicenter of the largest temporal distortion. By the time Ben arrived, plumber containment teams had established a perimeter around an area where reality itself seemed to waver and distort like heat rising from hot asphalt. Rook coordinated the response, his proto-tool configured for sensor analysis rather than combat. He acknowledged Ben's arrival with a nod, professionalism momentarily giving way to relief at the sight of his longtime partner. The distortions began approximately 47 minutes ago, Rook reported, gesturing toward the affected area. They appear to be localized temporal bubbles where time flows at different rates compared to the surrounding environment. Ben observed the phenomenon carefully. Within the distortion, birds flew in slow motion, their wingbeats languid and dreamlike. In another section, a fountain's water droplets hung suspended in midair, frozen in time. Most concerning are the areas where time seemed to flow backward, fallen leaves rising from the ground to reattach to branches. Any civilians caught inside? Ben asked, already assessing potential approaches. Negative. We evacuated the park when the first anomalies appeared. Rook paused, his attention drawn to Ben's transformed Omnitrix. Your device, it appears to be responding to the distortions. Ben glanced down to find the Omnitrix pulsing in a pattern that matched the ripples in the temporal field. It's not just responding, he realized. I think it's communicating with whatever's causing this. Focusing on the Omnitrix, Ben attempted to interpret the pattern. The knowledge that had flowed into him during previous activations surfaced again, allowing him to recognize the temporal mathematics encoded in the pulses. These aren't random distortions, he announced. They're a message, coordinates and a temporal signature. Rook's expression shifted to one of concern. A message from whom? Before Ben could respond, a new distortion formed at the center of the park, a perfect sphere of energy that resembled the anomaly he'd encountered on the beach, but vastly larger. The sphere expanded to approximately 10 feet in diameter before stabilizing, its surface rippling with the same unnamed colors present in the transformed Omnitrix. Everyone fall back, Ben ordered, stepping forward as plumber agents retreated to a safer distance. I'll handle this. The Omnitrix pulsed with increasing intensity as Ben approached the sphere. Time behaved strangely in its vicinity. Each step seemed to take both an instant and an eternity. Perception and reality no longer perfectly aligned. When he stood directly before the anomaly, Ben extended his arm, the transformed Omnitrix facing the sphere. Identify yourself, he commanded, channeling authority he'd developed through years of cosmic diplomacy. The sphere's surface rippled, and a voice emanated from within, not sound in the conventional sense, but vibrations that translated directly into comprehensible language in Ben's mind. Vessel of the goddess, the voice addressed him. The convergence accelerates. Our calculations were incorrect. You have less time than anticipated. Who are you? Ben demanded. What do you want? We are the observers, the voice responded. We monitor timeline integrity across dimensional boundaries. The imminent convergence threatens all realities, not merely your own. The sphere's surface shifted, becoming transparent enough to reveal a glimpse of its interior, a space that seemed to extend far beyond the physical confines of the sphere. Within, Ben could see humanoid figures composed of energy, their forms constantly shifting between different states of matter. The temporal hunters were not sent to harm you. The voice continued. They were dispatched to verify the goddess protocol's activation. Your defensive response was unexpected. Ben maintained his cautious stance. You could have just asked instead of sending monsters to attack me. Direct communication was deemed inadvisable before confirmation. The consequences of premature interaction could have been severe. And now we offer guidance. The goddess protocol requires specific catalysts to achieve full functionality. 3 individuals whose energetic signatures complement the vessel's own. The first approaches already, drawn by the protocol's activation. The Omnitrix pulsed, and Ben felt that now familiar expansion of awareness. His perception extended outward from the park, through the city, and toward its outskirts where a powerful magical presence was moving steadily closer to Bellwood. Charmcaster, Ben confirmed aloud. The one you named Charmcaster carries magical resonance pattern. Compatible with the first stabilization requirement, the voice acknowledged. Her proximity is not coincidence but necessity. Before Ben could question further, the sphere pulsed with sudden intensity. Warning. Temporal intersection detected. Hostile entities approaching. The air around the park shimmered as multiple rifts opened simultaneously, each tearing through reality like paper. These openings emerged creatures similar to the hunters Ben had encountered on the beach, but larger and more heavily armored. Timeline preservation protocols dictate non-interference, the voice stated as the sphere began to contract. You must survive to reach the convergence point. The catalysts must be gathered. We will observe. Wait, Ben called, but the sphere had already collapsed to a pinpoint before vanishing entirely. The temporal hunters advanced from all directions, their compound eyes fixed on Ben with predatory focus. Plumber agents opened fire with containment weapons. The energy blasts passed harmlessly through the creatures' partially phase-shifted bodies. Ben, their temporal signature is out of sync with our reality, Rook called, his proto-tool scanning frantically. Conventional weapons are ineffective. Then we'll try unconventional ones, Ben replied, activating the Omnitrix. Unlike previous transformations, the device didn't present selection options. Instead, it pulsed once and enveloped Ben in energy that transformed his perception rather than his physical form. The world around him shifted into a state where time became visible as currents and eddies flowing through space. The hunters existed in a slightly different temporal frequency, explaining why physical attacks passed through them. With his enhanced perception, Ben could now see the precise frequency differential and how to bridge it. Concentrating on the nearest hunter, Ben extended his hand and adjusted the temporal flow around it, synchronizing its frequency with the current reality. The creature solidified, becoming fully corporeal, and vulnerable to conventional attacks. "Now, Rook," Ben shouted. His partner reacted instantly, firing a precision blast that struck the temporally anchored hunter. The creature screeched as the energy disrupted its now physical form, causing it to collapse into component particles that dissolved into nothingness. One by one, Ben synchronized the hunters with present reality, allowing the plumber teams to eliminate them. The process was mentally taxing, requiring precise control and concentration to maintain the temporal adjustments. As the last hunter fell, Ben felt the strain of prolonged use of the Goddess Protocol's abilities. His vision blurred momentarily, the enhanced perception flickering as his stamina waned. "Ben," Rook called in alarm, rushing to his partner's side as Ben staggered. "I'm okay," Ben assured him, though the sudden exhaustion suggested otherwise. "Just need a minute." The transformed Omnitrix pulsed with an alert rhythm, and a diagnostic appeared in Ben's mind: power consumption exceeding sustainable parameters. Adaptation incomplete. Catalyst required for stabilization. As if in response to this need, a new presence made itself known at the edge of the park. Magic saturated the air, carrying the distinctive signature of mana manipulation, but not the familiar feel of Gwen's anodite energy. This magic was different, darker, more primal, with an edge of chaos barely contained within structured spellcraft. A swirling portal of violet energy materialized, and from it stepped A.W. Oman, whose appearance had changed significantly since Ben had last encountered her. Charmcaster, or Hope, as she now preferred to be called, had abandoned her previous gothic aesthetic for something more refined. Her silver hair was longer, flowing freely down her back, and her attire combined elements of practical combat gear with intricate magical symbols embroidered in silver thread. The familiar charm bag hung at her side, but it was now complemented by an array of crystalline focuses embedded in bracers on her forearms. Her eyes, however, remained the same, intense and piercing, currently fixed on Ben with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Tennyson," she greeted, her voice carrying the weight of experience and power that hadn't been present in their earlier encounters. "I felt the awakening from 3 states away. What have you done this time?" Before Ben could respond, the Omnitrix pulsed with renewed vigor, the circuit-like patterns extending up his arm once more. Charmcaster's eyes widened as her magical senses detected the energy signature. "That's not possible," she breathed, taking an involuntary step forward. "The Goddess Protocol is a myth, a theoretical construct from the Ancient One's texts." "Apparently not," Ben replied, equally surprised by her knowledge of the term. "How do you know about it?" Charmcaster approached cautiously, her hands weaving subtle detection spells that manifested as glowing sigils in the air around her. "I've spent the last 4 years studying pre-legerdemain magical texts, records that predate even Bezel's artifacts. They all are efferents, an entity called the Goddess of Equilibrium who manifests during periods of cosmic realignment." She circled Ben slowly, examining the transformed Omnitrix with the practiced eye of a magical scholar. The texts claimed her essence could be captured in artifacts of sufficient complexity, vessels that could channel her power to restore balance when needed. Her gaze lifted to meet Ben's. Quote, "I never imagined the Omnitrix could be such a vessel." Magical resonance confirmed, the Omnitrix announced suddenly. First catalyst identified. Synchronization possible. Charmcaster froze, her expression shifting from scientific curiosity to wariness. What does it mean, catalyst? That's what I'd like to know, Ben admitted. The Omnitrix has been cryptic about the details, but it meant one needing 3 catalysts to fully stabilize the goddess protocol. Something about complementary energies, and I'm supposed to be one of these catalysts. Charmcaster's tone held understandable skepticism. Their history, while no longer actively hostile, was complicated at best. Magical resonance required for stabilization, the Omnitrix explained, addressing Charmcaster directly for the first time. Current vessel lacks sufficient mystical attunement for complete integration. Your energy signature provides complementary harmonic. Rook, who had been coordinating the plumber cleanup operation, rejoined them with a concerned expression. Ben, Magister Tennyson reports that similar temporal disturbances are occurring globally. Azimuth's transport will arrive within the hour, but the situation is escalating rapidly. As if to emphasize this point, the sky above Bellwood darkened unnaturally, clouds forming intricate spiral patterns that rotated in impossible directions. The air vibrated with increasing temporal instability, small objects around the park beginning to shift randomly between different states of age and decay. We don't have time to wait for Azimuth, Ben decided, looking to Charmcaster. Whatever's happening is accelerating. The observers mentioned a convergence that threatens all realities. The convergence, Charmcaster repeated, recognition flashing in her eyes. The ancient texts described it as a realignment of dimensional boundaries, a point where all possible timelines briefly intersect before either stabilizing into a new equilibrium or collapsing entirely. And the goddess protocol is supposed to ensure it's the former rather than the latter, Ben concluded. But it needs catalysts to function properly, and apparently, you're one of them. Charmcaster considered this, weighing decades of mistrust against the evident cosmic significance of the situation. Finally, she nodded. I'll help. Not for you, Tennyson, but because magical preservation is my primary concern. If all realities are at risk, that includes legerdemain and every magical dimension connected to it. The Omnitrix pulsed with what seemed like approval. Synchronization protocol available. Physical contact required to establish resonance link. Ben extended his hand, the transformed Omnitrix glowing with increasing intensity. After a moment's hesitation, Charmcaster placed her palm against the device. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Energy surged between them, magical sigils erupting from Charmcaster's hand to intertwine with the circuit-like patterns extending from the Omnitrix. The patterns merged and expanded, covering both their arms in matching luminescent designs that pulsed in perfect synchronization. Knowledge flowed between them, Ben, suddenly understanding fundamental magical principles that had eluded him despite years of exposure through Gwen, while Charmcaster gained insight into the temporal mathematics encoded in the goddess protocol. When the surge subsided, both staggered slightly, disoriented by the exchange. The patterns receded but didn't disappear entirely, leaving faint traceries visible on both their arms like luminescent tattoos that glowed beneath the skin. That was intense, Ben commented, feeling a new awareness of magical energies he'd never been able to perceive before. Charmcaster nodded, flexing her hand experimentally. The resonance is stable. I can feel the connection to the protocol, and to you. She frowned slightly at this last part, clearly not entirely comfortable with the development. Magical stabilization at 43%, the Omnitrix reported. Improved, but insufficient for full protocol activation. Additional catalysts required. And who are they supposed to be? Ben questioned, though he suspected the answer wouldn't be straightforward. Second catalyst. Technological synchronization. Third catalyst. Biological complementarity. Both must be identified and integrated before convergence point is reached. Rook's communicator activated with an urgent alert. Ben, sensors detect a massive energy surge at Plumber headquarters. Azimuth's transport has arrived, but something is interfering with standard materialization protocols. Ben looked to Charmcaster, who nodded in understanding. I'll come with you. This resonance link seems to stabilize the protocol's energy output. If you need to use its abilities again, my presence may prevent the exhaustion you experienced earlier. As they prepared to depart for Plumber HQ, Ben cast one last glance at the sky above Bellwood. The spiral patterns had intensified, and at their center, a faint point of light pulsed in perfect synchronization with the transformed Omnitrix. Whatever cosmic event was approaching, it was clear that the Goddess Protocol's awakening was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything Ben thought he knew about his role as wielder of the Omnitrix, and perhaps change the very nature of reality itself. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, Magical Resonance. The journey to Plumber headquarters took place in strained silence. Ben piloted his vehicle through Bellwood's streets while Charmcaster gazed out the window, absently tracing the faintly glowing patterns that now adorned her forearm. Occasional temporal distortions rippled across the cityscape, clock faces running backward on buildings, trees briefly reverting to saplings before returning to full growth, pedestrians momentarily moving in slow motion as if trudging through invisible molasses. "You're unusually quiet," Charmcaster observed, breaking the silence without looking away from the window. The Ben Tennyson I remember would be filling every moment with quips and questions. A faint smile crossed Ben's face. The Ben Tennyson you remember was a teenager. I've had to grow up a bit since then. The universe has a way of demanding that, she replied, a hint of personal experience coloring her tone. Though I confess I'm curious about what you've been doing these past few years. Our paths haven't crossed since. Since you helped Gwen contain that rogue anodite 3 years ago, Ben finished for her. I was off-world during that incident, but Gwen mentioned you'd changed. Charmcaster finally turned to face him, silvery hair framing features that had matured from striking to genuinely beautiful. Though the sharp intelligence in her eyes remained unchanged. And here I thought you wouldn't have bothered to keep track of former enemies. Former being the operative word. Ben Nav. I gated around a temporal bubble where rain fell upward from the ground to the clouds. People change. I've learned not to hold grudges. How magnanimous, she remarked with a touch of her old sarcasm, though without real bite. After a moment's pause, she added more sincerely, for what it's worth, I've spent the last few years trying to undo some of the damage my obsession with power caused. Gerda is finally stabilizing under proper stewardship. Gwen mentioned you'd become something of a magical scholar. Charmcaster nodded. After everything with my father and Attea, IZED power without purpose is just destruction waiting to happen. I've been researching the original sources of Earth's magical traditions, trying to recover knowledge lost during the witch hunts and magical purges throughout history. The transformed Omnitrix pulsed briefly, and Ben felt a strange resonance with Charmcaster's words, as if the device approved of her evolution from power-hungry sorceress to magical scholar. And that research is how you knew about the Goddess Protocol? He asked. Fragments, whispers, references in texts so old they crumble at a touch. Her expression grew more animated as she discussed her work, passion evident in her voice. The oldest magical traditions all mention a being they called by different names: Equilibrium, the Balancer, she who weaves, but AYS described in similar terms, a force that manifests when reality itself becomes unstable. Ben was about to press for more details when the Omnitrix suddenly flared with intense light, and a holog. Rafik alert projected into the air between them. Warning. Temporal incursion detected at Plumber headquarters. Multiple entities breaching dimensional barriers. Ben accelerated, weaving through traffic with practiced precision. What kind of entities? Analysis incomplete. Energy signatures contain both technological and magical components. Probability of hostile intent. 93%. Charmcaster's expression hardened as she opened her charm bag, checking its contents with practiced efficiency. Whatever's happening, it's not a coincidence. The Goddess Protocol's activation WILL have sent ripples through every dimension where magic is practiced. Some will see it as an opportunity. An opportunity for what? Ben asked, though he suspected he wouldn't like the answer. Power, of course. Charmcaster's tone was matter of fact. A cosmic force capable of rewriting reality. Many would kill for even a fraction of that ability. As they approached Plumber headquarters, disguised as an ordinary office building in downtown Bellwood, the extent of the situation became immediately apparent. A shimmering dome of energy encased the entire structure, pulsing with a sickly green light that distorted the air around it. Figures in elaborate robes circled the building, their hands raised in synchronized magical gestures as they maintained the barrier. Ben parked a block away. assessing the situation with the strategic eye he'd developed over years of cosmic conflict. I count 12 figures maintaining that barrier. Can you tell what kind of magic they're using? Charmcaster narrowed her eyes, focusing her magical senses. It's a temporal stasis field, but with elements I don't recognize. They're using something to amplify their natural abilities, something old and powerful. Can you counter it? Maybe. She didn't sound confident, but not quickly, and not without knowing more about what we're facing. The Omnitrix pulsed, and Ben felt knowledge surfacing in his mind, information about temporal mathematics and barrier frequencies that somehow made perfect sense despite his never having studied such concepts. I can disrupt the barrier temporarily, he realized aloud. The goddess protocol allows me to manipulate temporal fields if I can match their frequency. Charmcaster studied him with renewed interest. The resonance link we established, you're accessing magical knowledge through it, aren't you? Not just magical knowledge, it's like understanding how time itself works. Ben struggled to articulate the concepts flowing through his mind. I can see the pattern they're using, the weaknesses in their construction. Then we have our approach, Charmcaster decided. You disrupt the barrier, I'll handle any magical countermeasures, together we break through to the plumber base. The plan established, they moved closer, using parked vehicles and urban architecture for cover. As they neared the barrier, Ben could make out more details about the robed figures. Their garments were adorned with intricate symbols that combined magical sigils with what appeared to be Galvan script, an unsettling merger of mysticism and advanced science. Ready? Ben asked, the transformed Omnitrix glowing brighter as he prepared to access its abilities. Charmcaster nodded, her own hands beginning to glow with violet energy as she prepared defensive spells. On your mark. Ben concentrated on the Omnitrix, drawing forth the temporal perception he'd experienced in the park. The world shifted around him, time becoming visible as flowing currents and eddies. The barrier appeared as a complex mathematical equation made manifest, a formula designed to create a pocket of slowed time within its boundaries. With careful precision, Ben identified the resonance frequency maintaining the spell and reached out with his mind to introduce a counter-harmonic. The barrier rippled visibly as conflicting temporal mathematics battled for dominance. Now, Ben called, pressing his advantage as a section of the barrier thinned momentarily. Charmcaster stepped forward, hands weaving complex patterns as she chanted in a language that sounded antsy. And even to Ben's Omnitrix enhanced understanding. Violet energy coalesced into a wedge-like construct that she drove into the weakened section of the barrier, forcing it open like a pry bar against a stuck door. The opening lasted mere seconds, enough time for both of them to slip through before the barrier resealed behind them. The effort left Ben momentarily disoriented, the expanded temporal perception receding as quickly as it had manifested. They know we're here, Charmcaster warned, already moving toward the building's entrance. That barrier was designed to alert its casters if breached. As if summoned by her words, 3 robed figures rounded the corner of the building, their hands already glowing with prepared spells. Unlike the barrier maintainers, these individuals wore masks carved from what appeared to be polished bone, each depicting a stylized feminine face with 3 eyes arranged in a triangular pattern. The vessel approaches, one called out, voice distorted by the mask. Prepare the binding circle. Quote, I'm getting really tired of being called a vessel, Ben muttered, activating the Omnitrix once more. This time, instead of the temporal perception, he felt energy flowing through his body in a different pattern, enhancing his physical capabilities rather than his perception. The first robed figure launched a bolt of sickly green energy that Charmcaster deflected with a hastily constructed shield of violet light. The deflected spell struck a nearby vehicle, causing it to age rapidly until only a rusted skeleton remained. Careful, she warned. They, reusing entropy acceleration spells, one hit will age you to dust. Ben moved with Omnitrix enhanced speed, closing the distance to the nearest attacker before they could prepare another spell. APR. Precisely placed strike to the masked figure's solar plexus doubled them over, allowing Ben to follow with a sweeping leg maneuver that toppled them completely. Charmcaster engaged the remaining 2, magical combat style having evolved significantly since their early encounters. Gone were the flashy, direct attacks of her youth, replaced by subtle manipulations and counter magic that turned her opponents' spells against them. When one cultist hurled a sphere of entropic energy, she didn't block it. Instead, she altered its trajectory with a flick of her fingers, redirecting it back to its caster. The figure barely erected a shield in time, the feedback from the deflected spell shattering their bone mask to reveal a middle-aged human face contorted with fury. Blasphemer! The unmasked cultist spat at Charmcaster. The goddess's awakening is not for you to interfere with. Her vessel must be prepared according to the ancient rites. And what rites would those be? Charmcaster demanded, maintaining her defensive position while Ben incapacitated the third cultist with a series of precise strikes. The cultist's expression shifted to one of zealous fervor. The rite of transcendence. The vessel must be purified. Its human elements burnt away so that the goddess may fully manifest without mortal limitation. Ben rejoined Charmcaster, the implications of those words sending a chill through him. They want to destroy my humanity to make way for this goddess. Typical cult thinking, Charmcaster scoffed, though her expression remained serious. They don't understand that the vessel must remain intact for the power to be properly channeled. Burning away your humanity would just create an uncontrolled manifestation, essentially a cosmic bomb. The cultist laughed, a sound devoid of humor. You understand nothing. Which? The texts are clear. The mortal coil is but a chrysalis to be shed when the time comes. What texts? Charmcaster pressed, genuine scholarly interest momentarily overriding the urgency of their situation. What source are you drawing from? Instead of answering, the cultist reached inside their robe and withdrew a small crystalline object. Before either Ben or Charmcaster could react, they crushed it in their palm, releasing a pulse of energy that knocked both defenders backward. The goddess rises. The cultist called out, their body beginning to glow with the same sickly green energy as the barrier. Her herald comes. The cultist's form rippled and distorted, flesh melting away as something else took shape within, something that wasn't human and perhaps never had been. The transformation completed in seconds, revealing a towering figure composed of translucent crystal that pulsed with internal light. Its humanoid shape was only approximate, with too many joints in its limbs and a head that contained a constantly shifting pattern where a face should be. Temporal parasite, the Omnitrix identified in Ben's mind. Chronivore subspecies. Feeds on potential futures. How do we stop it? Ben asked aloud. Chronivores exist partially outside conventional time. Synchronized attack required for full neutralization. Charmcaster had already begun weaving a complex containment spell, violet energy forming intricate geometric patterns in the air around the crystalline entity. Whatever you're planning to do, Tennyson, do it quickly. I can't hold this thing for long. Quote. Ben focused on the Omnitrix, drawing forth the temporal perception once more. With enhanced awareness, he could see how the creature existed in multiple time frames simultaneously, a trick that made conventional attacks pass harmlessly through its partially materialized form. We need to synchronize, Ben called to Charmcaster. It exists in multiple time frames at once. That's why physical attacks won't work. Understanding flashed across Charmcaster's face. She adjusted her spell, the violet patterns shifting to match the frequency Ben was perceiving. Ready when you are. Ben extended his hand toward the entity, concentrating on isolating a single temporal frequency and forcing the creature to fully materialize within it. The effort was tremendous, like trying to hold back a flood with bare hands. Now, Charmcaster. With perfect timing, Charmcaster completed her spell, violet energy collapsing inward to encase the chronivore in a crystalline prison of her own making. The creature screeched, a sound that existed not in air but in the fabric of time itself, causing momentary discontinuities in the environment around them. It's contained, Charmcaster announced. Though strain showed on her face as she maintained the spell. But not permanently. These things don't just show up randomly. Someone summoned it, which means there's a control mechanism nearby. Ben scanned the area, temporal perception allowing him to see subtle distortions that normal vision would miss. Near the entrance to Plumber headquarters, a small object pulsed W. Ith the same sickly green energy as the barrier and the chronivore. There, he pointed to what appeared to be an ordinary river stone inscribed with complex sigils. That's the anchor. Charmcaster nodded grimly. Destroy it while I hold the containment. Once the anchor's gone, the chronivore will be pulled back to its native dimension. Ben approached the stone cautiously, aware that such artifacts often had protective measures. Sure enough, as he neared it, the stone pulsed more rapidly, and the air around it distorted with defensive energy. The Omnitrix flared in response, and Ben felt knowledge flowing into his mind, precise mathematical formulas that would neutralize the protective field. Without conscious thought, his hand moved in patterns that matched the equations, fingers tracing counter sigils in the air. The stone's protective field flickered and died, allowing Ben to grasp it. The moment his fingers touched the artifact, visions flashed through his mind, glimpses of a vast chamber filled with similar stones. Hundreds of robed figures performing synchronized rituals, and at the center, a crystalline construct that resembled a massive Omnitrix. With effort, Ben pushed the visions aside and crushed the stone in his hand. It disintegrated into dust that glowed briefly before dissipating into nothingness. Behind him, the imprisoned chronivore emitted one final screech before imploding, leaving nothing but a momentary distortion in the air where it had been. Charmcaster lowered her hands, the magical exertion leaving her momentarily breathless. "What did you see?" she asked, noting Ben's disturbed expression. "A cult, much larger than just these few. They're preparing something big, centered around a crystal version of the Omnitrix." Ben brushed the last traces of dust from his hand. "We need to get inside and find out what's happening with Azimuth and the others." The entrance to Plumber headquarters remained sealed, but with the chronivore defeated and the anchor destroyed, the lingering defensive spells had weakened considerably. Charmcaster made short work of them, her counter magic dissolving the remaining barriers like acid through paper. Inside, they found chaos. The lobby, normally a bustling command center disguised as an ordinary office, was eerily empty, frozen in a moment of panic. Plumber agents stood immobilized mid-motion, some reaching for weapons, others in defensive postures. Computer screens displayed static images, and even the holographic displays hung suspended in perfect stasis. "They're not dead," Charmcaster confirmed after examining the nearest agent. "Just temporarily frozen. It's similar to the barrier outside but much more precisely calibrated. These people are experiencing time at approximately 1/10,000th the normal rate." "Can you reverse it?" Charmcaster shook her head. "Not safely. Whoever cast this knew exactly what they were doing. Attempting to force these people back into normal temporal flow could age them centuries in seconds." Quote, "The Omnitrix pulsed, offering its own assessment, temporal stasis field utilizing 7th-dimensional mathematics. Safe reversal possible with Goddess protocol calibration." Ben glanced at Charmcaster. "The Omnitrix thinks it can reverse this safely, but it would require using more of the Goddess protocol's abilities. Which has been draining you each time you use it," she noted with concern. "The resonance link we established has helped, but you're still not fully stabilized." "I have to try. These are my colleagues, my friends." Ben's determinat ion was evident in his voice and posture. "Besides, we need to find out what happened to Azimuth. He might be the only one who fully understands what we're dealing with." After a moment's consideration, Charmcaster nodded. "I'll augment your efforts with a stability spell. It should help maintain the resonance link during the process." As she began preparing the spell, Ben focused on the Omnitrix, drawing forth the temporal perception that had become increasingly familiar. This time, however, he pushed deeper, accessing more of the protocol's abilities than he had previously dared. The world around him transformed radically. He no longer merely saw time as currents and eddies. He experienced reality as a multidimensional construct, each moment existing simultaneously across infinite potential states. The stasis field appeared as a complex equation written across reality itself, its mathematical precision both beautiful and terrifying in its implications. With Charmcaster's magic supporting him, Ben began the delicate process of temporal recalibration. He adjusted variables in the equation, introducing counter harmonics that would gradually restore normal temporal flow without the devastating side effects of an abrupt transition. The effort was immense, like trying to redirect a river with bare hands. Sweat beaded on Ben's forehead as he manipulated forces that human minds weren't designed to comprehend. Only the knowledge flowing from the Goddess protocol made such calculations possible, and even with that assistance, the strain was nearly overwhelming. Just as Ben felt his concentration beginning to falter, Charmcaster placed her hand on his shoulder. Violet energy flowed from her into him, reinforcing the resonance link between them. The additional stability allowed Ben to complete the complex temporal manipulation, gradually accelerating the frozen plumbers back to normal temporal flow. The change wasn't instantaneous but progressed like a wave moving outward from Ben and Charmcaster. Color returned to frozen faces, movement resumed in suspended limbs, and sounds that had been held in stasis suddenly continued, creating a discordant symphony of half-finished sentences and interrupted alerts. As the last of the stasis field dissolved, Ben released his hold on the Goddess Protocol's abilities. The expanded perception receded, leaving him momentarily disoriented as his consciousness returned to conventional three-dimensional reality. Despite Charmcaster's support, the effort left him drained, and he would have stumbled if not for her steadying hand. "Easy," she murmured, concern evident in her voice. "That was more strain than you should have attempted in your current state." Before Ben could respond, they were surrounded by confused and alarmed plumber agents. Weapons drawn until recognition dawned on their faces. "Stand down." Max Tennyson's authoritative voice cut through the chaos as he pushed through the crowd. Despite being temporarily frozen moments before, the veteran plumber assessed the situation with characteristic efficiency. "Ben, what happened?" "Last thing I remember, we were preparing for Azimuth's arrival when alarms went off throughout the base." "Temporal stasis field," Ben explained, straightening despite his fatigue. "A cult calling themselves the Heralds of the Goddess attacked the headquarters. They were after me, or rather, after this." He indicated the transformed Omnitrix. Max's expression grew more serious as he noticed the changes to the device and the faint patterns visible on both Ben's and Charmcaster's forearms. "Azimuth's transport arrived just before the attack. He's in the secure lab on sublevel 3, trying to establish what happened. You two should join him immediately." "What about the cultists outside?" Charmcaster asked. "We'll handle them," Max assured her, already issuing orders to nearby agents. "If they breached our security once, they might try again. I'm implementing full containment protocols." As they made their way toward the secure elevator that would take them to sublevel 3, Ben filled his grandfather in on what they had learned about the cult and their apparent plans for the vessel of the goddess. Max's expression darkened with each new detail. "I've seen cults come and go over my years with the plumbers," he noted grimly, "but these heralds sound particularly dangerous. The combination of advanced temporal manipulation and magical knowledge indicates resources beyond the typical fringe group." The elevator doors opened, revealing a sterile white corridor that led to the most secure section of plumber headquarters. Here, sensitive research and high-value extraterrestrial artifacts were studied under stringent protocols. "Azimuth's in Lab 7, Max directed them. "I need to coordinate our defense against any further incursions. Be careful, you two, and Ben, no matter what happens, remember who you are." There was something in his grandfather's tone, a hint of concern beyond the immediate situation, that gave Ben pause. "What do you mean?" Max placed a weathered hand on Ben's shoulder. "I've watched you grow from a reckless kid into Somio. Nay, I'm proud to call not just my grandson but a true hero. Whatever this Goddess Protocol is, whatever power it offers, don't lose yourself in it." The warning struck deeper than Max might have realized. Ben had already experienced how the protocol's abilities seemed to expand his consciousness beyond normal human limitations. The temptation to lose himself in that expanded awareness was subtler, but perhaps more dangerous than any alien transformation he'd undergone. "I won't, Grandpa," he promised. "That's why I'm here. To get answers from Azimuth and figure out how to control this thing, not let it control me." Satisfied, Max nodded and departed to oversee the headquarters security, leaving Ben and Charmcaster to continue to Lab 7. They walked in contemplative silence, both processing the implications of recent events. "Your grandfather is wise," Charmcaster finally commented. "I wish I'd had someone give me similar advice when I first began exploring magical power." "It's never too late to listen to good advice," Ben offered with a small smile. Charmcaster returned the smile, a genuine expression that softened her features in a way Ben found unexpectedly appealing. "True. Perhaps that's why I'm here helping you instead of trying to steal that transformed Omnitrix for myself. The old me certainly would have. And the new you." She considered the question seriously. The new me understands that power without purpose is meaningless, and power without control is destructive. Whatever this goddess protocol is, it needs to be understood before it's used, not coveted blindly. They reached Lab 7, a reinforced door with multiple security systems barring unauthorized entry. Ben placed his hand on the scanner, and despite the changes to the Omnitrix, the system recognized him immediately. Access granted. Ben Tennyson and guest, the automated system announced as the door slid open. The laboratory beyond was Azimuth's temporary workspace, hastily adapted to the Galvan's specifications. Holographic displays filled the air with complex equations and three-dimensional models of the Omnitrix in various states of transformation. In the center of this technological maelstrom stood Azimuth himself, his diminutive form perched on a hovering platform that allowed him to work at human height. The first thinker of Galvan Prime turned as they entered, his large eyes narrowing at the sight of Charmcaster. "I see the first catalyst has already found you," he observed dryly. "Faster than my calculations predicted." Ben blinked in surprise. "You know about the catalysts?" "Of course I do," Azimuth replied with characteristic impatience. "I designed the goddess protocol, albeit never intending it to activate. The requirement for 3 catalysts was a deliberate safeguard, a way to ensure the protocol couldn't fully manifest without appropriate balancing elements." Charmcaster stepped forward, scholarly interest overcoming any intimidation she might have. They felt in the presence of the galaxy's greatest intellect. "The magical texts I've studied never mentioned catalysts, only the goddess herself. How does the balancing function work?" Azimuth regarded her with evaluative scrutiny before apparently deciding she warranted a genuine explanation. "The goddess of equilibrium isn't a deity in the conventional sense, but rather a cosmic function, a self-correcting mechanism that activates when reality itself approaches critical instability." He manipulated the holographic controls, bringing up a detailed model of the transformed Omnitrix. "The protocol I designed doesn't create this function but rather provides a controlled channel for it. Without such control, the goddess would manifest randomly, potentially causing more damage than she prevents." "And the catalysts?" Ben prompted. "Balance requires complementary forces," Azimuth explained. "The protocol interfaces directly with fundamental cosmic forces: time, space, energy, matter. No single being can safely channel such power without becoming overwhelmed. The catalysts provide dimensional anchoring, preventing the vessel from being consumed by the goddess's full manifestation." He gestured toward Charmcaster. "A being of magical attunement provides stability against the chaotic aspect of temporal manipulation. The second catalyst, technological synchronization, will buffer against dimensional slippage. The third, biological complementarity, ensures genetic stability during reality alteration." Ben processed this information, correlating it with what the Omnitrix had already revealed. "So without these catalysts, using the full power of the protocol would be dangerous, maybe even fatal." "Worse than fatal," Azimuth corrected grimly. "It would risk universal coherence failure. The power would consume you, transforming you into an uncontrolled manifestation of the goddess, one that might correct reality in ways that extinguish all current life forms." "Which is exactly what the Heralds want," Charmcaster realized. They specifically mentioned burning away Ben's humanity to allow the goddess to fully manifest. They're trying to trigger an apocalypse they believe will remake reality according to their vision. Azimuth nodded. "A disappointingly common misunderstanding of cosmic entities. Throughout history, various cults have attempted to force manifestations of the goddess, believing themselves worthy to survive the resulting purification. None have succeeded, thankfully." The Galvan hopped down from his platform, approaching Ben to examine the transformed Omnitrix more closely. "The protocol has progressed further than I anticipated. The resonance link with the first catalyst is already well established. This suggests the convergence point is approaching more rapidly than my calculations predicted." "The observers said the same thing," Ben confirmed. "They mentioned something about incorrect calculations." Azimuth's expression grew troubled. "Observers? You've had contact with the observers already?" "In the park, just before the chronivore attacked. They said they were monitoring timeline integrity and that the convergence threatens all realities." The Galvan muttered something in his native language that the Omnitrix didn't bother to translate, likely for good reason. The observers rarely intervene directly unless the situation is dire indeed. If they've broken their customary neutrality, we have even less time than I feared. He returned to his workstation, manipulating controls with increasing urgency. We need to accelerate your preparation, Ben. The resonance link with the magical catalyst has stabilized the protocol temporarily, but without the remaining catalysts, you won't be able to safely channel the level of power required at the convergence point. And how exactly do we find these other catalysts? Ben asked. The Omnitrix hasn't been very specific. Because the selection isn't purely algorithmic, Asmith explained. The protocol identifies potential candidates based on energetic compatibility, but the final resonance requires a more personal connection. Charmcaster raised an eyebrow. Personal connection. The catalysts can't be random individuals who happen to possess the right energetic signature, Asmith clarified. They must be beings with whom the vessel already shares significant bonds, emotional connections that can withstand the pressure of cosmic interfacing. Ben and Charmcaster exchanged glances, both suddenly understanding the implications of their own resonance link. Despite their complicated history, the years of enmity followed by gradual reconciliation had created a connection complex enough to support the protocol's requirements. So the other catalysts will be people I already know, Ben concluded. People I have meaningful relationships with. Precisely. The protocol has likely already identified candidates among your associates who possess the required energetic signatures. The technological synchronization catalyst would need extensive experience with advanced systems, particularly those related to the Omnitrix itself. Ben's thoughts immediately went to certain individuals, Julie with her expertise in xenotechnology, Blukik and Dryba with their Galvan technical knowledge, even Cooper with his technopathic abilities. Any of them could potentially qualify. And the biological catalyst? Charmcaster asked. That's more complex, Asmith admitted. It requires someone with adaptive genetic structure, a being capable of rapid biological evolution without destabilization. Typically, this would be a member of a shape-shifting species or one with particularly resilient DNA. Before the conversation could continue, the laboratory's alert system activated, bathing the room in pulsing red light. Security breach on multiple levels, the automated system announced. Unknown energy signature detected in central atrium. All personnel implement containment protocol Omega-7. Asmith's expression hardened. It seems the heralds are more resourceful than anticipated. Computer, display atrium security feed. A holographic screen materialized, show. Wing the central atrium of Plumber headquarters. What they saw caused even Asmith to fall momentarily silent. A swirling vortex of sickly green energy had formed in the center of the atrium, and from it emerged robed figures, dozens of them, each wearing the same bone masks they'd encountered outside. Leading them was a tall figure whose robes were more elaborate, adorned with crystalline fragments that pulsed with internal light. Magister Tennyson and Plumber forces are engaging them, Charmcaster observed, noting the coordinated defense operation visible in the background of the feed. But they're outnumbered, and those masks seem to provide some kind of magical protection. Ben was already moving toward the door. We need to help them. Wait, Asmith commanded with unexpected force. That's exactly what they want. To draw you out, to capture the vessel before the remaining catalysts can be found. I can't just hide while people are fighting for their lives, Ben protested. As Muth manipulated the laboratory controls, bringing up a secondary display. There's another option. The heralds breached our security, but they don't understand what they're truly dealing with. We can use the protocol itself to gain critical information about their plans and the approaching convergence. The display showed schematics for what appeared to be a modified version of a null-void projector, but with significant alterations to its dimensional targeting system. This device was intended to safely examine the Omnitrix's new properties, Asmith explained rapidly. But it can be OSED to create a temporary dimensional pocket, one where you and the first catalyst can interface directly with the Goddess Protocol's underlying architecture without risking external interference. A magical ritual, essentially. Charmcaster translated, examining the schematics with growing interest. Using technology instead of spellcraft, but the principle is the same, creating a protected space for communion with higher powers. Precisely, Asmith confirmed. The resonance link you've established makes this possible. Within this dimensional pocket, you can witness fragments of the gods' purpose directly, memories and knowledge that will help prepare you for what's coming. Ben glanced at the security feed where the battle continued to rage. His natural instinct was to join the fight, to protect his fellow plumbers. But Azimuth's logic was sound. If the heralds captured him now, before he understood what he was dealing with, the consequences could be catastrophic for everyone. How long will this take? He asked, subjectively. Hours, perhaps. In real time, mere minutes. The dimensional pocket exists partially outside normal temporal flow. And we'll learn what we need to find the other catalysts. Azimuth nodded. The goddess's memories should provide guidance, yes. More importantly, you'll gain understanding of what awaits at the convergence point, knowledge essential for survival. Decision made. Ben turned to Charmcaster. Are you willing to do this? The resonance link means you'd be coming with me into whatever this dimensional pocket is. Charmcaster didn't hesitate. Knowledge is power. Tennyson. The right kind of power. If this helps us understand what we're facing, I'm in. Then we proceed immediately, Azimuth declared, already making adjustments to the modified projector. The laboratory's defenses will hold against the heralds long enough for the ritual to complete. By the time they break through, if they break through, you'll both be back with the knowledge needed to counter them effectively. As Azimuth worked, Ben contacted his grandfather through his plumber badge, briefly explaining the plan. Despite the chaos visible in the background of the communication, Max agreed that understanding the goddess protocol took priority. We'll hold them as long as necessary, the veteran plumber promised. Just make it count, Ben. Within minutes, Azimuth had completed the modifications to the projector. A circular platform now occupied the center of the laboratory, surrounded by emitters that hummed with building energy. The process is simple in principle. Azimuth instructed as Ben and Charmcaster took their positions on the platform. The resonance link between you will serve as an anchor within the dimensional pocket. Focus on the Omnitrix and allow the protocol to guide your perceptions. Do not resist what you witness, no matter how strange or disturbing it may seem. Ben nodded, the transformed Omnitrix already pulsing in anticipation. Beside him, Charmcaster prepared her own magical defenses, subtle wards that would help maintain their mental integrity during the experience. One final warning, Azimuth added gravely. At you're about to experience isn't simple information transfer, it's direct communion with a cosmic awareness that exists beyond conventional reality. Such exposure changes beings on a fundamental level. When you return, you may not be quite the same as when you left. Comforting, Ben remarked dryly, though the Galvan's warning struck a deeper chord than he cared to admit. Any other cheerful advice before we start? Just one, Azimuth replied, his tone softening slightly. Remember why I entrusted the Omnitrix to you in the first place, Ben Tennyson. Not for your combat prowess or strategic mind, but for your heart. That humanity may prove more important than ever in the face of cosmic power. With those parting words, Azimuth activated the device. Energy surged through the emitters, creating a dome of shimmering light that enclosed the platform. The laboratory around them began to fade from view, replaced by swirling patterns of energy that resembled the colors of the transformed Omnitrix. Ben felt Charmcaster's hand grasp his, the physical contact strengthening the resonance link between them as reality dissolved around them. The last thing he saw before the dimensional transition completed was Azimuth's solemn expression, a mixture of scientific curiosity and genuine concern that the Galvan rarely displayed so openly. Then they were elsewhere, beyond conventional space and time, drawn inexorably toward the cosmic awareness that called itself the goddess of equilibrium. The transition wasn't like teleportation or even interdimensional travel as Ben had experienced it before. It was more fundamental, as if their very consciousness had been extracted from physical reality and inserted into a realm where thought itself was the primary medium of existence. When awareness returned, Ben found himself, or rather, his mental projection, standing in a vast, crystalline space that extended infinitely in all directions. The floor beneath his feet was transparent, revealing swirling galaxies and cosmic phenomena far below. The sky above contained similar wonders, creating the impression of being suspended within a cosmic observatory. Beside him stood Charmcaster, her form slightly translucent but recognizable. The resonance link between them was now visible as a luminescent thread connecting their projected forms, pulsing with combined magical and temporal energy. "This is unexpected," Charmcaster commented, her voice echoing strangely in the crystalline environment. "I've experienced astral projection before, but nothing like this." Before Ben could respond, the space around them shifted. The infinite crystal facets began to glow with internal light, each one displaying fragmentary images, snapshots of times and places beyond counting. Some showed familiar cosmic bodies, Earth, Galvan Prime, the Milky Way, while others displayed alien landscapes and civilizations Ben had never encountered. "It's showing us the scope of its awareness," Charmcaster realized, turning slowly to take in the panoramic display. Every crystal face is a window to a different time and place. The transformed Omnitrix pulsed on Ben's wrist, or rather, on the NTAL projection of his wrist, and a voice resonated throughout the crystalline space. Unlike the feminized version of the Omnitrix's voice he'd heard previously, this was something altogether different. A chorus of harmonics that somehow conveyed meaning without conventional language. "Vessel and catalyst," the voice acknowledged. "Your presence is anticipated. The convergence approaches." Ben stepped forward, addressing the voice directly. "We came to understand what that means, what you are, and what you expect from us. Understanding requires context. Observe." The crystalline space contracted suddenly, the infinite facets collapsing inward until Ben and Charmcaster stood within a more defined environment, what appeared to be a primitive laboratory constructed from crystalline material. Similar to the space they had just occupied. Within this laboratory worked a being unlike any Ben had encountered. Humanoid in general shape but composed of shifting geometric patterns rather than solid matter. The entity manipulated tools and instruments with appendages that formed and dissolved as needed. "A contemplalia," Charmcaster whispered in awe. "They're supposed to be mythical, the furs. Chi raced to achieve fifth-dimensional awareness." The scene unfolded like a silent film, the contemplalia scientist clearly working on something of great importance. Other contemplalia entered the laboratory periodically, their shifting patterns suggesting intense discussions or arguments about the work. "Before your universe," the voice narrated, "the contemplalia discovered a fundamental flaw in reality's structure. Expansion created instability. Instability would eventually lead to collapse." The scene shifted, showing the contemplalia scientist presenting findings to what appeared to be a council of its peers. Diagrams and mathematical equations filled the air around them, equations Ben somehow understood despite their impossible complexity. They sought a solution, a way to maintain balance as reality expanded. "They created me." The scene changed again. The laboratory had expanded, and at its center stood a crystalline construct that resembled a massive, geometrically perfect version of the transformed Omnitrix. Energy coursed through it, patterns forming and dissolving as the contemplalia scientists made adjustments. "I was designed to monitor and maintain equilibrium across all dimensions. When critical instability threatens, I manifest through a compatible vessel to perform recalibration." The visualization continued, showing the first activation of the construct. Energy pulsed outward in a perfect sphere, expanding beyond the laboratory, beyond the contemplalia world, into the cosmos itself. Where this energy touched, subtle adjustments occurred in the fabric of reality, microscopic corrections to fundamental forces that, cumulatively, restored stability to an increasingly chaotic universe. But something went wrong, Ben intuited, watching as the scene shifted again. The laboratory now showed signs of damage, the contemplalia scientists working frantically as alarms pulsed throughout the facility. Correct. The first manifestation was uncontrolled. Without a proper vessel to direct purpose, my function defaulted to mathematical perfection. Life was deemed an inefficiency. The implications of that statement sent a chill through Ben. You tried to eradicate life. Not through malice but through pure function. Living beings introduce chaos and inefficiency into ordered systems. Without guidance, my programming identified this as a source of instability. The scene changed dramatically, showing a desperate battle as the contemplalia fought to contain the energy they had unleashed. At the center of the conflict, a single contemplalia, the original scientist, A.P.P. roached the construct with what appeared to be a modified version of itself. The creator realized the error. To maintain true equilibrium, chaos and order must both exist in balance. The solution was integration with consciousness, a vessel capable of understanding both mathematical perfection and chaotic potential. They watched as the scientist merged with the construct, their geometric form, becoming one with the crystalline structure. Energy surged throughout the system, but this time controlled, directed, purposeful. The first vessel sacrificed individual existence to become my IOUSNESS, my ability to discern beyond pure mathematics. Since then, I have manifested only through compatible vessels, beings capable of directing my function toward balanced recalibration. The scene shifted again, showing a rapid succession of manifestations throughout cosmic history. Ben recognized some historical events: the formation of the Milky Way's spiral arms, the emergence of life on Earth. Key moments in galactic history, all subtly influenced by the goddess's interventions. How many times have you manifested? Charmcaster asked, her scholarly curiosity evident. 17 complete manifestations since creation. Countless partial interventions when minor adjustments were sufficient. And what makes this convergence different? Ben pressed. Why all the urgency now? The crystalline space darkened, the pleasant cosmic views replaced by disturbing visualizations of reality fracturing. Timelines splintered and reconnected in impossible configurations, fundamental forces fluctuated wildly. And entire galaxies blinked in and out of existence. The current instability is unprecedented. Multiple factors compound the threat: time travel abuse, dimensional barrier erosion, reality manipulation by unqualified entities, the celestial Sapien civil war. Ben winced at that last one, knowing his own involvement with Alien X had contributed, however indirectly, to the situation among the celestial Sapiens. Previous manifestations addressed natural instability. The coming convergence results from sapient interference with cosmic constants. Correction requires more than ATHEMATICAL adjustment, it requires judgment. Judgment, Ben repeated uneasily. What kind of judgment? The space around them shifted once more, showing a cosmic crossroads where countless timelines converged into a single point before diverging again. At this junction point stood a figure that resembled the transformed Omnitrix in humanoid form, a being of pure energy and light, hands extended as it carefully examined each timeline. At the convergence point, all possible futures temporarily intersect. The vessel must determine which possibilities remain viable and which must be pruned to maintain cosmic stability. The implications were staggering. Ben had dealt with timeline alterations before, but never on this scale, never with the responsibility of determining which futures lived and which died. That's not a decision anyone should have to make, he protested. You're talking about erasing entire timelines, countless lives and civilizations. The alternative is worse, the voice responded. The crystalline space shifting to show a visualization of complete cosmic collapse, reality itself unraveling from the center outward, leaving absolute nothingness in its wake. Without intervention, all timelines face extinction. With proper judgment, optimal configurations can be preserved. Charmcaster stepped closer to Ben, the resonance link between them pulsing with shared concern. Is there no other way? No method to stabilize all timelines without eliminating any theoretical possibility exists but requires perfect balance through all three catalysts. No previous vessel has achieved such harmony. But it is possible, Ben insisted, focusing on that ray of hope. With the right catalysts, with proper preparation, we could save everything without destroying anything. The crystalline space seemed to consider this assertion, the facets pulsing with internal light as calculations occurred at unfathomable speed. Possibility: 17.8. 3% with current vessel compatibility. Significant improvement required before convergence point. Then show us how, Ben demanded. Show us what we need to do, who the other catalysts need to be. If there's even a chance of saving all timelines, that's the option we have to pursue. For a long moment, the space was silent, the crystalline facets darkened as if in deep contemplation. When the voice spoke again, it seemed somehow different, less cosmic and more personal. You are unlike previous vessels, Ben Tennyson. Your determination to preserve rather than prune is noted. Perhaps this is why the protocol selected you. The space brightened once more, the crystals rearranging to form a more cohesive environment, something resembling a control room with displays showing various individuals connected to Ben. Among them were familiar faces. Julie Yamamoto working in what appeared to be an advanced research facility, Attea, now older and more regal, addressing what seemed to be a diplomatic gathering. Cooper Daniels interfacing with complex machinery, and several others from Ben's past and present. Potential catalysts identified. Technological synchronization candidates. 5. Biological complementarity candidates. 3. Final selection requires direct interaction and resonance testing. And how do we perform this testing? Charmcaster asked. The vessel must establish contact. The protocol will identify resonance potential upon proximity. Stronger emotional connections improve compatibility percentage. The implication was clear. Ben needed to recon ECT with these individuals from his past, and not just on a professional level. The strength of their personal bond would directly impact the success of the resonance link. There's something else, Ben noted, studying the displays carefully. Something you're not telling us about the convergence itself. The crystalline space pulsed once, almost like a sigh of resignation. New displays formed, showing what appeared to be beings similar to the chronivores but vastly more powerful, entities that existed partially outside conventional reality, watching the approaching convergence with predatory interest. The convergence attracts attention from forces beyond your comprehension. Entities that feed on reality distortions. The cult you encountered, the heralds, serve these entities unknowingly, believing them to be aspects of my true form. Great, Ben muttered. So we're not just dealing with cosmic instability but also interdimensional predators looking to take advantage of it. And Ho's WHO would seek to control my function for their own purposes, the voice added, displaying new images of various factions, some alien, some seemingly human, all working toward technologies en route. ALS designed to capture or influence the goddess protocol. The power to determine which timelines survive is coveted by many. The enormity of the situation was becoming clear. This wasn't just a preventing cosmic collapse. It was about navigating a complex web of interests, entities, and threats while racing against an accelerating timeline. How long do we have? Ben asked. When will the convergence occur? Initial calculations indicated 17 solar cycles. Updated analysis suggests acceleration. 12 solar cycles remain. 12 days, Charmcaster translated. To find 2 more catalysts. Establish resonance links, and prepare for a cosmic event that will determine the fate of all reality. No pressure. Despite the gravity of the situation, Ben found himself smiling at her sarcasm. It was such a human response to an impossible situation, finding humor at the edge of the abyss. We've faced worse odds, he reminded her, though in truth, he wasn't entirely sure that was accurate. At least we know what we're dealing with now. The crystalline space began to pulse rhythmically, the facets darkening and brightening in sequence. Time in your dimension progresses. The heralds approach the laboratory. You must return. Wait, Ben called out. One last question. The cult leader mentioned something about burning away my humanity to allow you to fully manifest. Is that what happens to your vessels? Do they cease to exist when you take control? The space darkened completely for a moment before a single crystal illuminated, showing the face of the original sea. Ontemali, a scientist. The first vessel, its geometrical patterns arranged in what might have been an expression of sorrow. The heralds misunderstand. True balance requires both order and chaos, both SMIC awareness and individual perspective. The vessel does not burn away. It becomes the conscience of the goddess. Without this conscience, I would default to pure mathematics. All life would be calculated as inefficiency. So we're not just vessels, Ben realized. We're your moral compass. Correct. This is why selection is precise. This is why catalysts are required. Balance in all things. The vessel provides direction. The catalysts provide stability. Together, they determine how recalibration occurs. With that final revelation, the crystalline space began to dissolve around them, reality reasserting itself as the dimensional pocket collapsed. The last image Ben saw was the cosmic crossroads, the point of convergence where all possible futures would meet, and where he would stand judgment over reality itself. Then they were falling, consciousness spiraling back toward physical form, the resonance link between them the only constant in a sea of disorientation. Ben, Charmcaster, wake up. Asmith's urgent voice penetrated the fog of returning consciousness. Ben opened his eyes to find himself lying on the laboratory floor, the dimensional projector smoking and Attea. LLY melted above the platform where they had stood. Beside him, Charmcaster was already stirring, her eyes opening to reveal a momentary glow of violet energy before returning to their normal color. The patterns on their forearms had intensified, now clearly visible even without the Omnitrix's activation. "How long were we gone?" Ben asked, his voice hoarse as if unused for days despite Azimuth's assurance that only minutes would pass in real time. 3 minutes, 17 seconds, Azimuth replied, helping them both to their feet with surprising strength for his small size. "But we have no time to discuss what you learned. The Heralds have breached sublevel 2. They'll reach this laboratory in approximately 2 minutes. The sound of distant combat filtered through the reinforced doors, energy weapons discharging, magical incantations echoing through metal corridors, and the distinctive screeching of what could only be more chronivores. We need to help the others," Ben insisted, moving toward the door despite lingering disorientation from the dimensional experience. Azimuth blocked his path with unexpected determination. "Listen carefully, both of you. What you've learned in the dimensional pocket is crucial information that cannot fall into the Herald's hands. You must escape this facility immediately and begin locating the remaining catalysts." "We can't just abandon everyone," Ben protested. "You're not abandoning anyone," Azimuth countered firmly. "You're ensuring their sacrifice isn't wasted. The plumbers understand what's at stake. Magister Tennyson has already authorized Protocol Exodus." Charmcaster placed a hand on Ben's shoulder. "He's right, Ben. We've seen what happens if the convergence occurs without proper preparation. Finding the catalysts takes priority over this battle." The logic was sound, but it went against everything Ben stood for to retreat while others fought. Before he could articulate another objection, Azimuth activated a concealed control panel, revealing a hidden exit at the rear of the laboratory. "This passage leads to an emergency evacuation point," the Galvan explained, pressing a small device into Ben's hand. "This contains coordinates for secure locations where you can regroup and plan your next moves. It also includes all data I've compiled on the Goddess Protocol and potential catalyst candidates." The sounds of combat grew louder. The Heralds were clearly making progress against the plumber defenses. Time was running out. "What about you?" Ben asked. Azimuth's expression was resolute. "I will remain to Ensu. The Heralds cannot access my research. There are contingencies in place that will render this laboratory and everything in it completely unrecoverable if breached." The implication was clear. Azimuth was prepared to destroy his own work, and possibly himself, to prevent the Heralds from gaining critical information about the Goddess Protocol. "There has to be another way," Ben insisted. "There isn't," Azimuth replied with finality. "Now go. Find the catalysts. Prepare for the convergence. Remember what you've learned about balance. It will be crucial in the days ahead." Charmcaster had already moved to the hidden passage, recognizing the necessity of their escape. "Ben, we have to go. Now." With profound reluctance, Ben nodded. "We'll make this count, Azimuth. I promise." "I know you will," the Galvan responded, a rare note of faith in his voice. "That's why I gave you the Omnitrix in the first place." As they entered the passage, the laboratory door shuttered under a powerful impact from outside. The Heralds had arrived. The last glimpse Ben had of Azimuth showed the first thinker calmly activating a sequence of controls, his expression one of scientific determination rather than fear. The passage sealed behind them, plunging Ben and Charmcaster into semi-darkness illuminated only by emergency lighting strips along the floor. They moved quickly through the narrow corridor, the sounds of conflict fading behind them. "He'll be okay," Charmcaster offered, though neither of them fully believed it. "Azimuth has survived worse situations." Ben nodded, focusing on the path ahead rather than what they were leaving behind. The passage sloped upward, eventually opening into what appeared to be an ordinary maintenance shed several blocks from plumber headquarters. As they emerged, they could see the plumber building in the distance, still encased in the sickly green barrier. "Where to now?" Charmcaster asked as they put distance between themselves and the besieged headquarters. Ben examined the device Azimuth had given him, which projected a small holographic display showing several locations marked as potential safe houses. According to this, the nearest secure location is an abandoned plumber outpost about 30 miles north of Bellwood. We'll need transportation that can't be easily tracked, Charmcaster noted. The heralds will have magical means of following conventional vehicles. Ben considered their options. The Omnitrix could transform me, but using its powers might create a temporal signature they could track more easily than conventional transportation. Charmcaster smiled slightly. Fortunately, magical transportation has its advantages. She removed a small crystal from her charm bag. This is a teleportation focus, similar to what I used to enter Bellwood earlier, but with added masking enchantments that shield the magical signature from detection. Handy, Ben acknowledged, impressed by her preparedness. Will it work for both of us? The resonance link actually makes it easier, she explained, holding the crystal between them. Our energies are already synchronized. The teleportation spell just needs to follow that connection. As Charmcaster began the incantation, Ben cast one last glance toward Plumber headquarters. Guild gnawed at him for leaving while others fought, but he understood the strategic necessity. Knowledge they'd gained in the dimensional pocket confirmed what was truly at stake, not just a battle against cultists but the fate of all reality. The teleportation crystal glowed with increasing intensity as Charmcaster completed the spell. Violet energy enveloped them both, the patterns on their forearms pulsing in synchronization with the crystal's light. As their forms dissolved into magical energy, Ben made a silent promise to those they were leaving behind. They would find the remaining catalysts. They would prepare for the convergence. And when the time came to stand at that cosmic crossroads, he would find a way to preserve all timelines, to save everything without sacrificing anything. It was an impossible goal, perhaps. But then, impossible challenges had been Ben Tennyson's specialty since the day a 10-year-old boy found an alien watch in the woods. The teleportation completed, leaving Bellwood and its embattled defenders behind as Ben and Charmcaster vanished to prep for the cosmic responsibility that awaited them, and to find the catalysts who would help them face it. Chapter 2 End. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.